propaganda. Whenever you ask for evidence, nobody has any. All those indictments and guilty pleas have nothing to do with the core investigation, which is collusion and treason between the Trump government and the Russian government. That none of that stuff is happening. They're using this. This was all ginned up by the Clinton campaign. So we never looked at the corruption in the 2016 election, which was the biggest election fraud in the history of our country, which was perpetrated on Bernie Sanders and the progressives in the 2016 election. We've never talked about that. That doesn't get talked about. Nobody talks about the corruption inside the DNC. Nobody's talking about any of that. They're talking about Russia. Again, Russia didn't render 80% of our workers living paycheck to paycheck, 30 million Americans without health care, 50% of all wage earners earning $30,000. So they didn't do that to us. We're doing this to ourselves. So this is a big distraction from our actual problems, and it's gotten so bad, even Nate Silver is going to debunk it. So here's what Nate Silver said. What fraction of overall social media impressions on the 2016 election were generated by Russian troll farms? 0.1%? I'm not sure what the answer is, but suspect it's low. And it says something that none of the reports that hype the importance of them address that question. So what Nate Silver is finally doing is saying all these reports, like this one from the New York Times, that is hyping this troll farm having control over our elections, they never asked what exactly is the impact that they had or what was their percentage. Here's Chris Hayes making fun of the troll farm stuff we showed you. This guy says, can we also step back to contemplate Cambridge Analytica's Facebook data identified a large enough demographic of likely Republican voters made up of compulsive masturbators that the Russians created not just targeted memes, but also an actual hotline with live operators? That's funny. That's funny. But Nate Silver, getting back to Nate Silver, he said it's far more likely that the Russians were just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and seeing what stuck, and that basing it on Cambridge Analytical data wouldn't have been meaningfully more effective than doing it at random. If you wrote out a list of the most important factors in the 2016 election, I'm not sure that Russian social media memes would be among the top 100. The scale was quite small, and there's not much evidence that they were effective. For instance, this story makes a big deal about a post-election Russian social media disinformation campaign on Robert Mueller, based on 5,000 tweets, ? That's nothing. Platform-wide, there's something like 500 million tweets posted each day.
But we had lines about masturbation in all of them.
What fraction of overall social media impressions on the 2016 election were generated by... Oh, wait, I already did that. A topic that just doesn't... So this guy tries to go against Nate Silver. Watch this. He goes, a topic that just doesn't lend itself to such isolated statistical analysis. That's not how culture or politics operates. Take the 0.1% at face value. Example, what if that led reporters to amplify narratives which colored the whole election? I think that happened in parts. So what this guy's doing is no matter what, you're not going to debunk this conspiracy theory that Russian, no matter what, he said, okay, I'll give you that. Still, I can make up another scenario that you can never debunk because there's no statistics applied to it. What if it colored what all the other reporters did? And so what Nate Silver says to this bullshit is this is getting dangerously close to an unfalsifiable hypothesis. If reporters hugely amplified narratives put forward by Russian trolls, let's see some actual evidence of that. So what he's saying is like, you just can't just pull that out of your ass and say that happened. I think that happened. But you have to have data. You have to have some kind of evidence. And they don't. Even Nate Silver is like, this is getting crazy. So there you go. That's the New York Times sucking again. Sucking horribly. How many more times can we debunk them? They just And they're not going to correct that story. They're never going to come back by, oh, by the way, we way overblew that story. That was ridiculous of us. The New York Times. Black people can't think for themselves. I don't know. And progressives. None of us can. And people who don't vote. None of us are thinking for, we're all being controlled. I voted for Hillary. There's someone thinking for themselves. That's original thinker, huh? That's a real loose cannon. That Hillary voter. Our next live Jimmy Dore show is February 1st in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a list of all our live shows, and please become a premium member if you can. Become a patron. It's the way we support this show because they're coming at us, and we give you bonus. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Check it out. Become a patron. And if you can, make sure you're still subscribed. They unsubscribe people every day. I know it sounds crazy. It only takes a second. Please make sure and click that bell when you subscribe so they'll send you a note.